Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is episode 17 of Indie Game Dev Report, a podcast where I interview indie game dev. I'm Rick Oakland, and today I've got an awesome interview with Twinsky of Twinsky Games. Many people might recognize him from his game design work with Cartoon Network. We're going to dive very deeply into all that shortly in an extensive interview. But first, I'd like to very quickly show my appreciation for all the support that my work in progress, Retro Spaceball, has gotten. Thank you so much, everyone, for wishlisting on Steam, playing the demo on itch. If you sent me testing notes, I can't tell you how much that means to me. Everyone is doing such a great job testing and finding bugs. Thank you so much. Please continue to support Retro Spaceball in all the best ways. I'm super proud of the humble community surrounding the game. You're all great, every single one of you. And we're a super inclusive bunch, so feel free to join us on Discord or social media. We're always glad to have new people, and we look forward to hearing about your journeys as a game dev. There's a link to the Discord server on the Retro Spaceball Steam page. As for my journey currently, things are going very smoothly with the development of Retro Spaceball, and a new demo beta build has been getting released at least monthly for quite some time now. So if you haven't checked out the project in a month, chances are that a new update is available. As it stands right now, I'm generally releasing about halfway through each month, which seems to work great for me, and each update is nice and large for the player. This lycanthropic cycle has crossed over into the podcast as well. So for the time being, I'm only able to get new episodes out monthly, which fits my schedule. I'd like to increase that eventually, but I can only do what I have time for. It feels right for right now, but things will probably change later. Okay, enough boilerplate nonsense. Without further ado, let's hear from Twinsky of Twinsky Games, talking about all kinds of interesting stuff, including how he went from working on early LCD screen mobile games on Nokia-style brick phones, all the way to being hired to work in VR for Cartoon Network. Hey everybody, I've got an awesome interview guest today. I've got Twinsky from Twinsky Games. You want to introduce yourself, Tim?
Hello, I'm that guy that Rick just said I am.
Now you're an indie developer, but you've also done some really cool contract work too, right?
Yeah, I kind of lucked into some cool connections through some random passion projects in the past.
Wow. So now I've asked you, because I know you in person before COVID and all that, and you told me that your breakthrough project was Indiana Stone, The Brave and the Boulder. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So back then,
and what year was this about?
What was that? 2014, I believe.
Okay. Wow.
So it was a while ago now. Maybe, yeah, I think that was the year. Maybe even 2013. But yeah, back in probably 2005 or so was the first time that I tried doing actual professional contract work for a game company.
Sure.
And back then it was for a mobile game, but that was before smart devices. So it was those brick phone games where you use the buttons to play.
Sure. I remember those.
I was burnt so bad on that deal where basically my employer kept stringing me along saying that my check was in the mail, and then I came to find out that he had never sent it because they didn't have a lot of money.
Wow.
When I told him oh hey, well, as soon as you pay me for the work that I've done, I will continue doing work on this project. And he just blew up at me and was just hey, the game development is supposed to be, passion work, and if you can't work a little bit without getting paid, you'll never make it in this industry.
Wow.
And that actually scared me away from game development for a long time.
That's sad.
So yeah, I was after that I got into just kind of typical programming and QA, and I was doing this. I was working at a is actually what brought me back to Arizona, was a job at a litigation software company, and I eventually ended up managing all of the install packages. So they called me the install wizard.
Wow.
But during all that time, I still, did game development as a hobby. I really got into it again when game jams started becoming a thing, because even before that, I used to think it was fun to try to do like a game in a day as just like a challenge to myself.
Like a rapid prototype type thing.
Yeah, yeah. So when game jams came along, I would like enter a few, and I was much better prepared than other people. But back then, I was still using like to make games, basically using like a um, successor to click and play, if you know anything about that.
Yeah, I've heard about it through just, research and stuff, mostly through other podcasts actually. But yeah,
Oh,
click and play
funny.
was a thing, totally.
Yeah, yeah. No, click and play is as stupid as it was. Like back when it came out in like the mid to late 90s, that's when it originally came out, and it was basically the Mario Maker of like game development. But yeah, it was a little bit after that that I started moonlighting, and I was like, you know what? I want to be uh, an official indie developer. And I was playing a lot of Spelunky, so I had it in my head that to be an indie developer meant that you had to make a game about Indiana Jones or somebody similar to that.
That's hilarious.
So that's why I made Indiana Stone, the Brave and the Boulder.
And that could have helped your marketing a little bit because everyone was kind of already thinking that kind of in the same headspace, I think, because Splunky and that type of stuff, and also Indiana Jones was kind of popular at the time too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was when they made the fourth movie, which nobody well, it doesn't technically exist. Not really canon.
We won't get into that.
But
The crystal skulls.
but yeah, it was fun making that game because when I released that, that was when like everybody was starting to make infinite runners on
Okay.
mobile devices. So I was like, well, what if you're the thing chasing after the guy?
Which is a great like stance switch, I like that.
You could call it a role reversal.
Role reversal. That's a better word for it. Absolutely. Yeah. So as far as Indiana Stone goes, now the way you described it to me was that there was someone on a plane going to GDC that found it and tweeted about it. Now is that
He
accurate?
didn't tweet about it, not quite. It was basically, yeah, his name is Ryan Harwell, and he's like a guy at Cartoon Network whose job was to like connect people from different companies together.
Oh
I
wow.
forget what the actual title of that position is. It's something that
Headhunter?
people
No.
don't. I mean, in a way, it's parallel to that. It's almost like an in-house headhunter in a way.
Okay, okay.
But it's kind of like, it's the kind of person who will be like, oh, right over here, they need help with this. Okay, I'm gonna run and find like a contractor for that. So he did
Oh,
a lot of like hooking up like game development
that's awesome.
within Cartoon Network, and back then, it was a lot of Flash games still and stuff like that
Oh, sure.
for their website, but they were just starting to get into mobile games. He played this, he shared it around the office a bit, and like even the COO of Cartoon Network was like apparently playing it and really having a blast.
Wow. Okay. And that kind of segues into present day almost because just recently you've done work with Cartoon Network. Is that correct?
Yeah, so yeah, it was very, very fortunate to me. Back then, you could just release something that was kind of polished on mobile and get noticed for it. I don't think that's true anymore today. It was funny because I released it right before GDC. I happened to be going to GDC. He happened
Oh,
to be
wow.
going to GDC, so he sent me an email, and we actually like met up like the next day or 2 days later.
I think I missed that part of the story last time. That's awesome.
Yeah, and we started talking about like different project that I could possibly do for them. And fast forward like a month or so, and I pitched a Adventure Time game to them with like a little proof of concept, like visual style. And yeah, that got greenlit.
And that got turned into Time Tangle?
That's right.
Awesome.
Which both of these mobile games you can't play anymore because it just takes so much time and effort to like maintain mobile games so that they'll still work on like future OSs.
Wow.
And that involves like migrating it to newer version of Unity, which can like break the physics, can break all text in the game. It can just break like so much in-game logic that like unfortunately it was never viable to upkeep either Indiana Stone or Time Tangle.
Yeah.
So you can't even play these games anymore, which is kind of frustrating.
That is a little frustrating, and I've talked to people about Time Tangle. I haven't played it myself, but I have talked to other people who did play it, and they liked it. So it is a little disappointing that it's no
Yeah,
longer
it was
available.
well received. It was also one of those like last like mobile games that was like pay for it and play it. I guess there's some indie games that are still like that, and I guess there's like the Apple Arcade, but like 99.9% of mobile games now are all like, especially like IP games,
Hmm.
you know, that are released by big companies. I know that since then Cartoon Network's released a bunch more Adventure Time, and they're all freemium kind of pay money for the gems kind of games.
Sure, sure. I mean, I know we're kind of skipping ahead here, jumping around the timeline here, but this recent project from 2019, I think you released it, uh, Cartoon Network VR.
Oh yeah. I was brought back in. This was a fun project because they actually brought me into like yeah, Ryan, the same guy that contacted me about making a game for them. As soon as VR started picking up, he was just super obsessed with it. He was like the number one evangelist for VR games.
Right on.
So he actually talked management and Cartoon Network to like open up a little in-house studio. He had these really cool dreams for it. Unfortunately, they didn't pay out, and COVID is ultimately the reason why.
Uh,
But um, but yeah, the idea was to have a on-site in Burbank, California, right outside of LA, to have like a little studio where every month he would bring in a group of creatives to kind of um, like rapid prototype a VR concept,
that's so cool.
then use other companies to like expand that concept into like a longer, like 30-minute or so experience,
Sure.
and then take the ones that are the best received and then like turn those into like fully fledged VR experiences.
In theory, it sounds like it would be a good process for a company with a lot of money.
Right. Yeah, so as kind of a test, they released Cartoon Network Journeys, which you can play on Steam. It's free. And that was meant to be like the volume one of like kind of getting their feet wet on this whole process.
Uh huh.
And yeah, the game that he just like teamed me up with a group of like amazingly talented people, some who've been showrunners for Cartoon Network cartoons, a really hilarious voice actor, um, and yeah, somebody who like yeah, I just met some very cool people. Somebody who used to work at Cartoon Network, got super burnt out, became a hermit for a while, worked for Facebook for a while, became super burnt out again, became a hermit again, but then he got pulled in for this VR project.
Oh wow. Well, that's awesome to network with people who know the industry and stuff, been
Yeah,
around.
yeah. So we
That's
made
really
we
cool.
made this game called Jest to Impress, which was the concept is you're a jester trying to impress the king. If you don't do a good enough job, then he'll pull the lever and feed you to the dragon.
That's awesome. So what ways do you impress the king?
Like all these weird props appear in front of you, and it's almost a puzzle game. Like you have to figure out how to use the prop to make everybody laugh.
That's interesting. So does that use the Cartoon Network IP and stuff like that?
No, that's actually Journeys doesn't use any IP. It's all like these weird creative
Interesting.
concepts. Yeah, that like the process was that like when he brought everybody in on site, we just did a few days of like having fun, getting to know each other. We did like an escape room together, and
That
then
does
I think
sound fun.
yeah, I think it was just on like the third day that we would all like come up with and pitch ideas to each other.
Wow. That sounds like quite a team experience.
Yeah, it was very unique for sure, and yeah, it was a yeah, I don't know, it might have been like a once in a lifetime kind of experience for me because all of that it was always a struggle to figure out how to kind of turn a profit into this whole like VR development within Cartoon Network.
Sure.
In a way, he was just kind of experimenting and using the budget of a big studio but like putting it towards almost like indie style development. I mean, like I
Yeah.
was the sole developer for Just to Impress. Everybody else was making art
Oh
assets,
wow. Yeah,
and
that's
like
what I was gonna ask you is what kind of stuff you did. But if you did all of it, wow, I mean that's
yeah. I mean,
impressive.
that's what I'm used to for indie development. It's just all the design and all the code.
That's so cool. And while you were working in with Cartoon Network and this once in a lifetime opportunity, you had another project that you were also itching to work on, but you had to wait until you know things were a little bit further along with the other project, right? So what's this your newest project? What's the project you're working on now called?
Oh yeah, I've always had a bunch of games in the back burner, but this yeah, the one that I'm putting my full-time effort into now is a it's a shoot 'em up kind of quirky cartoony game. It's called
Does it have
Space
a title?
Ruckus.
Oh, Space Ruckus. Okay. Awesome. And now I did play this one again, pre COVID, just before COVID, and I'd love to play it again. I'm sure it's been through a lot since then because that was a while ago now.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
could you describe the game a little bit? I know it's kind of like it's cylindrical, right?
Yeah, that's right. It has like a cylindrical play field just because I think it's I don't know. I
Oh, I
like
love that.
yeah, I like a lot of kind of the old horizontal wrapping shoot 'em ups like Fantasy Zone or even like something like Defender.
Sure.
Um, I think there's a lot of cool like design space. Um,
It leaves you to
and you don't have to
explore,
backtrack. Yeah.
right? And because you can't see it, you don't know what's going on over there. So your brain's constantly like, well, maybe something over there is worth checking
Well,
out.
no, that's what's great about it is that when it's 3D and cylindrical, you can see what's happening on the other side of the
Ah, okay.
stage. So
So a little
it
bit
like
like Defender's map.
yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. When it's brought into a 3D cylindrical space, it removes the need for some kind of mini map because that's sort of a pet peeve design flaw of mine is when man, you actually see this in a lot of VanillaWare's games where you'll have like these gorgeous backgrounds, but then there's like this little mini map in the corner that like shows you like important information, like what direction enemy attacks are coming from, or like where the enemy that you're trying to track down is relative to you. So you have to take your eyes off of like the gorgeous elements and look at this like stupid looking like primitive little grid with dots on it, and
Yeah.
you're spending more time looking at these like little blinking dots than you are at the like hand drawn assets and animation.
Word. Well, that's a really cool way to accomplish like a few goals at once there because it's a cool feature. It looks cool, and you're accomplishing the map thing. It's just all around a good idea. It seems like.
Yeah, it's definitely been a challenge finding the core design hook. The last time you played it, it had a heavy emphasis on abducting people from various planets and like trying to piece out as soon as possible. And I was trying to turn it into like this. It was kind of designed around getting positive feedback at small events, like like our IGDA showcase events.
Sure.
And if people would play it and be like, "Oh wow, that looks really cool," or like very gifable moments,
Yeah. Yeah.
then it's like, all right, now I'm onto something. I'm making something cool. But yeah, what I learned is that if you design a game just around cool moments, it's like every time you see the same cool moment, it becomes a little bit less cool. And if it doesn't have enough like extra substance to like carry it into a multi-hour gaming experience, you're gonna
Yeah.
have
That's a great
problems.
point. That's a really good insight. Absolutely. I think a lot of people can hear that and let it register and hopefully work that into their design. Because yeah, it's like it's a reward, a spectacle reward they call it in the art of game design. Um,
Yeah, or juiciness, as they
yeah,
more informally call it in a lot of talks.
absolutely. Yeah, and it doesn't like you said, every time you see it, it just dissolves a little bit.
Yeah. Um, So, yeah, it's well. What's funny, and I don't think I've mentioned this before, is that Space Ruckus is a pseudo sequel to a game that I made back in 2003 in Click and Play. It was something that I made right after I graduated from college.
I don't know
Um,
anything about this. I'd love to hear about it.
yeah, it's a game called Mysterious Floating Something. So you
In
can
all
look
of my
that up.
research, I didn't find that at all.
Yeah, it's it's just sort of a UFO game, abduct people. It's sort of a product of its time. It's um, has sort of like old school Flash game sensibilities where you're just kind of like playing something, getting currency, buying extra power ups, playing levels that are similar to previous levels with just a little bit more like harder enemies or whatever.
Sure, sure.
But yeah, I remember when I made that game, it was always well received. It's just, to bring it up to modern sensibilities to make it something worth playing.
So,
Always a challenge.
Click and Play, that was all 2D, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So everything you were doing was all sprite art before?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it would technically be called sprite art. Within that tool, you could just it was kind of like an all-in-one kind of thing. Like you could just, oh, like create a new object. Oh, now double click that object. Now it like has like this list of animation frames, and you can just like click on one and just start drawing it right there in Engine.
So you click and then you play.
That's right. Summarize.
Oh man, it's too bad we can't advertise for them. I don't think they're. I think
No,
they'd be
they
fun.
are. They
Oh, are they
yeah,
still a thing?
yeah, I think it's still called Multimedia Fusion now, which
Oh,
confuses people because they think of Macromedia.
yeah, I remember Macromedia.
Yeah.
That was the
But yet no,
precursor to Flash.
they're actually so a couple of fairly recent games that are super famous that have been made in it. The first Five Nights at Freddy's was made in in the Click and Play
Oh
software.
wow, I didn't know
So
that.
is Baba Is You.
Really,
Yeah.
really, wow. Well, that blows my mind. I'm glad you had that tidbit. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
everything else is made in Unity, but those two games.
So, back on, I I have trouble with the name. Something Ruckus, right? Space
Space
Ruckus?
Ruckus.
Space Ruckus. I knew it was something Ruckus.
Can't be
It's
spacing out on me like
it's
this.
it's new to me, so it's gonna take a minute to register. So with Space Ruckus, it's all 3D. Now, are you doing the models yourself, or is this something that you're
Well,
working
actually,
with others on?
well, sure.
Or
Yeah,
it's not all 3D? I'm sorry.
well, yeah, it's we're still actually finalizing the final like art style, so I can't
Okay,
say
it's
anything
still early
necessarily.
in the process.
Yeah. So I can't say 100% sure what it'll look like, but we're leaning in a heavy direction right now. But actually, it's
Does it still look like what I saw at all?
uh not really.
Oh, cool. Well, it was fairly polished, so I
That's
figured
true.
things
That's
were in
true. We did
place.
we did have to get rid of all of those assets because yeah, just the dimensions of everything were all off. We
Huh.
had to bring the field of view way in. Yeah, we had
Wow.
a wide field of view, which around a cylindrical play area becomes a problem around the edges because things kind of warp around the edges.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it makes it difficult to like gauge, in a bullet hell kind of game, makes it difficult to gauge the trajectory of like hazards and such.
Ah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So that and included with like a heavier focus on like level design instead of having like these big open um, play fields.
Sure.
Now we have like platforms and stuff that you kind of like weave around.
Oh, okay.
Um, so yeah, that leads
I
to
like that idea.
yeah, a
I
lot
think
of
that's
different
cool.
requirements. Yeah, yeah,
So
and it helps us make like each level feel very distinct. Where when it's just like a big arena, that was one of the problems we ran into before. Is like, okay, how do we even make each level feel different enough?
sure, yeah. In the early prototype, it almost seemed like it was wave based. And that, of course, a lot of prototypes are when the finished game isn't.
Yeah,
So it's going to be more level based, where things gradually get more difficult and more interesting as you go through. I take it
yeah,
then.
yeah, of
That's
course.
cool. Yeah, I love shooters, so I mean, and I don't think there's enough cylindrical shooters. I'm sure you've probably done more research than I have at this point.
Yeah, I was looking them up to kind of check it out. Of course, Resogun on PlayStation was a very popular one by
That's the one I
Housemarque.
know. Yeah,
Yeah.
PS4, right?
But even
Yeah.
that game, like as well as it did back then, its design is a bit dated by today's standards. I don't know that it could come out on well, on name alone, if it were ported to Steam, I bet it would do pretty well. But um, but if a new game were
No, I agree.
yeah, it's just
That place has been taken.
hmm
That game is
yeah.
out.
Yeah, it's like a high score chaser. Each level is pretty indistinct.
But
Uh,
the mechanics and that stuff, I mean, a lot
yeah,
of that
it's
is up for grabs.
sure. Yeah, there's another game that has more of a roguelite structure. That's a cylindrical game called Orbital Bullet, which
I don't know that one.
yeah, it's pretty cool. It's more of a platform game. It has some neat ideas for sure. It's in early access, so it's hard to say.
Uh, uh. Well, that's awesome that you've got other things to look at during the development, so that way you can, see what they're doing wrong or
It
what you
saves a
could be
little bit of
doing.
prototyping time. Yeah, like oh, I had that idea, and now I can see like it doesn't really work out, or like that's mostly what it's been.
Yeah, it can be really difficult if you don't have that. If you're just like doing something completely new and no one, it's like yeah, but
Yeah, hard from a marketing standpoint too, because it's like, hey, look at this thing that's not like other games that you know and love. Don't you want to
right,
buy it?
yeah, it's got to be
I'm just
something
amazed at like ever since the popularity of Hades. Well, I guess Hades wasn't even the first one like this, but just how many games are like that? Like a top-down zoomed out view where you're like
action
um
RPG hack and slash type thing.
action RPG, hack and slash, you got like your melee, you got your long range attacks, you got your either a dive roll or some kind of dash that makes you phase through projectiles.
Now that actually brings to mind a question that I didn't plan on asking. Now I saw recently somewhere that I think it was on Discord that you were playing Crosscode. Now isn't that one of
Oh
those
yeah,
games?
that's true. Yeah.
And it looks great. And
Oh
I
yeah, yeah,
got it
yeah.
wish
No,
listed
I'm
because
I'm
it looks
not
awesome.
I'm not throwing shade at these games. I just think it's a very interesting phenomenon that there's like
No, I
that there's so
agree.
many of them.
Honestly,
It's
I'm not a
it's
fan
there's
of
something
Hades
really there's something about the formula that really works for sure.
or Hades, right? I keep calling it
Yeah.
Hades, but in the game it's Hades, right? Or
What do you
am
keep
I
calling it?
wrong? I get them confused. Hades or Hades, they're both the
Oh yeah,
same.
yeah, yeah. It's Hades.
Okay, yeah. So in Hades, I got upset because I was like, well, I got to beat the game, and then you get to the end. No, sorry to spoil it, but you gotta beat it again. Give it again, beat it again. They just want you to keep beating the game. It's like, come on, wasting my time.
I know
But
it's like
that's just
ghosts and
me.
goblins all over again. It is funny how back then it was like, oh, beat the game to get the good ending, you gotta beat it again. Everybody complained, but these days it's a little bit more acceptable since like, oh, but now your loadout's gonna be different, and now you can add difficulty modifiers.
Yep, it's the Zelda second quest all over again.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that those games are cool. So it's a little bit it's cool to see them, jumping into the trends and stuff like that. But at the same time, like I'd like to make one of those games too. And if it's completely oversaturated, I won't be able to.
Um, yeah.
It's kind of to that point.
Well, I mean, a new game just came out in the exact same space called Dreamscapers. I've been enjoying that one. It's another overhead roguelite with melee, long range, dodge roll.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a good combination.
It has a very unique aesthetic. It has like that one like unique like strategy on how to build like an OP um like set of items and weapons. I think that's what kind of makes or breaks these games is like when you're playing through the roguelite, like what kind of decisions are you making? Are they interesting decisions? Is it like one dimensional, like, oh, well, obviously I'll take this thing because it's better? Or is it like, are there interesting synergies that you're trying to work towards?
Yeah, that's what I like is the synergies.
Yeah, of course. I think that's kind of a must in these kind of games now. I think all um, the super basic. You can even see that in like I don't know how much you know about Enter the Gungeon,
I haven't
uh,
played it, but I've heard about it.
which of course was directly influenced by Nuclear Throne.
I've definitely
Um,
played that one.
but yeah, Enter the Gungeon was in development for like an additional 4 years after it released. It wasn't even like an early access thing. It was just like, hey, every year we're going to do a major update that brings like extra bosses or an extra area and just like a goat load of new weapons and such.
And a bunch of new players, hopefully, right?
Sure. And yeah, you can see throughout their evolution how like they started leaning much more heavy on like various synergies. Where at first it was just kind of like, oh, are you lucky? Did you find these cool items that just straight up make you stronger?
Yeah. Now we're on this roguelite tangent. Is that something that's going on in Space Ruckus?
Yes, that's true.
Very cool. Very cool. So, what kind of things are we manipulating within Space Ruckus so far?
So one of the main unique elements that I have on is something that's called the power grid. So you play as a character named UFO, spelled YOOFOH, UFO,
I love it.
who's kind of this like anthropomorphic, UFO.
Right on.
And you install these various modules. It like zooms into kind of his like electronic guts, and you're like you find these modules of like various shapes, kind of like Tetris shapes and such, and you try to
I love it.
fit it inside of a power grid inside of his circuit board. And yeah, I've been the last couple of months
That sounds really cool.
yeah, last couple of months, one of my main focuses was like, how do I expand that system and turn it into something that like leads to like interesting synergies and like you can find these like batteries that can like power up adjacent modules of various types. So the idea is to make it like kind of an interesting puzzle where your brain is like racking on like the best way to make to have the most interesting power growth during a run, but not to sacrifice the action, not something that like, oh, I just got this new item. Now it's just like totally undoes everything that I set in place, and now I
Right.
have to like spend half an hour reorganizing things. That was a problem that an earlier iteration had, but I've fortunately found solutions to that.
That's
So
awesome.
it's been fun to design. Yeah, it's I'd say both that um and kind of the level progression, the way that it works as a whole are kind of the two most unique things about this particular game.
That's really cool. So, as far as the perks and stuff, are we talking like different types of bullets or different firing rate or
Yeah, so there's
shield
there's
capacity?
modules of different categories. So some of them will give you like these special attacks that you can do with a unique button. Some will give you the passive abilities, of course. And for the typical weapons, I actually have like a built-in synergy system where like if you um, if you equip like a boomerang weapon, then you shoot it, and like there are these unique looking like boomerang looking bullets that will shoot out and return back at you and move in kind of an arc.
Like Quick Man.
Sure. But then it's like you can also get like the flamethrower. The flamethrower by itself would just shoot like a close range fire out of your ship. But if you equip both the flamethrower and the boomerang, then it shoots, the boomerang weapons that are then on fire and can catch enemies on fire. And
Very cool.
it's designed with like interesting synergies in mind. So, like for example, there's a piercing weapon, and getting the boomerang combined with piercing is kind of one of the ideal synergies because then you can hit the same enemy twice with the same bullet.
Ah, yeah, that would be good. That sounds really cool. I can't wait to test this.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely been chugging along.
So, as far as testing goes, are you just doing it internally with like a few close friends then, or obviously we can't do much like group testing these days.
Yeah, that's true. And group testing, I think, is the most ideal in person, so that you can kind of just like see people's initial reactions.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It can be hard. I have a couple of friends who we share each other's projects with us, with each other, and ask for feedback and such. Um, it can be tricky though, because oftentimes to share a project with another developer, the kind of feedback you get is like, "Oh, well, if I were making this game, here's what I would do." And that's
Yeah,
not like really like,
it's
well,
definitely pretty far from player feedback.
yeah. And but even player feedback, like oftentimes players or like beginner designers have a hard time articulating the core of an issue.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. They just know there's something wrong.
Yeah, yeah. So it can be helpful for sure, but it can also be difficult to diagnose.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the job of the game designer. We're getting better all the time, right?
Yeah, I do love that. Just the game design lexicon seems to be improving a lot. It's just over the last 5 years or so, just the overall expected quality for an indie game has just shot through the roof.
It's crazy. It really is. But 5, 10 years ago, I was not where I am today. So
Yeah,
it's just kind of how it goes, I guess.
there's a lot of very, very good resources out there, and tools to make games have never been better. I will say that Unity is more capable than Click and Play. There, hot take.
We'll have to talk to the folks with Baba is you on that. Yeah. So I mean, you started back in 2010. I read somewhere. Does that sound about accurate? Like Unity, I guess is what I was reading.
Oh, maybe I started learning Unity around then. Yeah, probably around then. It was actually David Koontz who originally talked me into how important it was to learn Unity.
I don't know who that is. Is
He's the
that?
other co-chair
Oh,
of Phoenix IGDA.
oh, okay. You did study at UAT though, the University of Advancing Technology. Is that correct?
Yes, but that was like way back in 2002.
Wow, wow. So there was a bit of a time period between exiting school and starting games then.
Well, like I said, I'd always did games kind of as a hobby.
I see.
Um, like some of the other things I did, I dabbled a little bit into kind of the casual game space for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with a group called Riverman Media, and we made like a mobile game called uh,
Cash
well,
cow.
it is Cash Cow, yes.
I
Um,
did some research.
we were thinking like, there's so many like match three games out there. Let's just do it. Let's just make a match three game. We'll make it about like combining money. This will be our cash cow. That's it. Let's just call it cash cow.
That's
And
funny.
what's funny is that like it is a very different game compared to other match three games, because you're combining coins into like the next largest denomination until you like can combine four quarters and make a dollar.
Oh wow.
Um, And what's cool is that it was actually picked up by I forget what company pushed this forward, but it ended up being distributed to schools to like help teach kids like
How to count money, yeah.
rapidly counting money. Yeah.
That's actually really cool because, like, I've done a lot of jobs where it's like food and stuff, and you end up with people on the register who don't know how to count money.
Yeah, and that's one thing really funny about I mean, these days who goes around with pockets and hands full of coins? I can't even remember the last time that I like
Which makes it really hard to count money, I guess.
but back then, back in like whatever 2008 or so, probably is when we released that. Um, I remember that after playtesting the game a bunch, I could take out a handful of coins and just almost immediately know how much money was in my hand.
That's interesting. That's pretty good. So, and then I also read somewhere that in 2017 you worked on a game called Scoops and Birds for the Nintendo DS?
The 3DS, yeah, Scoop
The
and Bird.
3DS, okay.
Yeah, that was.
Scoop and Bird, okay.
I'll say that game was a bit of a misstep.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
Yeah, the idea was after making Time Tangle, I was like, you know, a lot of indie developers fall into this trap. They release something that's a big success, and then they're like, I need to one up myself. I need to make something even better. And then they get super burnt out.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna take a step back, take a refresher, make something simple but polished. And yeah, the problem is that it didn't have a super strong hook. Uh, and I just ended up just wasting way too much time, like kind of trying to polish something that didn't have. Uh, it was strange. It was the result of kind of analysis paralysis of like
Mm.
making a bunch of prototypes and not really sure of which one to go forward with. But I was sharing it with some friends, and a couple of people got showed excitement at kind of the jokes that were included in this game.
Okay. And you
So I
like
ran with it,
pun-based
but
development, so that makes sense.
a little bit, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, the person who runs the Bird store is Alice Cooper.
Alice Cooper.
Alice Scooper.
Alice Cooper, yes.
But yeah, it's actually inspired by a real life story of walking through a mall and glancing into a pet shop and seeing like a big bird cage in the middle of the store and seeing these big scoops hanging on the bird cage and speculating that whenever somebody buys the birds, the worker just takes one of the scoops, scoops the birds, and flings them at the customer. That's still my headcanon.
This, I mean, I saw like some screenshots and stuff, and I didn't gather that from the screenshots, but
Oh,
it sounds pretty good actually, the way you describe it.
yeah, that's the basic premise. I did actually release it on mobile. I think it's still available, but yeah, it was released after, like well after the point where you could just like soft release and have anybody notice it. So
Right, right.
it just kind of like completely fell through the cracks.
And then another question, why the 3DS?
Oh, that was more of an experiment,
Okay.
just to see, like to play with the dev kit for the first time. Um,
Was that like an added expense?
It was a pretty yeah, for sure. More than I would have liked. Um,
It
but
seems like not a lot of devs go that route.
uh,
The
well, uh,
3DS.
oh, well, sure. I mean, I released it a little bit too late, like after the Switch was already announced.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the 3DS was never a super practical place for indie developers, just because the um, game games weren't being particularly well marketed by Nintendo, unless they
Ah,
were like ports of um, existing popular games.
that makes
Now
sense.
Nintendo does a much better job. If you look at their YouTube account, for example, pretty much all the polished indie games will get like some kind of trailer to go up on Nintendo's official site. Sometimes they'll get featured on the Nintendo Directs, stuff like that.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I know it's got to be a struggle for them. They've got so many different games on their store now
Oh,
because
I
like
know, and
it's basically a phone.
sometimes I do like wonder because I'm probably one of the few people who will actually like go on my Switch every so often and look at the eShop and
I
just
do it too.
sort the games by release date. Let me just look through it. Let me just see everything that came
It's
out.
so hard to navigate and it's so
Uh
slow.
oh, it is slow. I'll give you that. I don't think it's that bad though compared to, I mean, compared to pretty much any other platform out there right now, including mobile and Steam, Switch is one of the easiest platforms to actually bloody sort something by release date. You can just like click one of the top level buttons and
Maybe I
see.
haven't found that yet. I'll have to try that one.
Yeah, because by default, of course, it shows you the featured stuff, which is primarily first party titles. But yeah, there's
I'm
just
always
like
looking at sales.
oh, sure.
I'm a cheapo when it comes to buying games.
But yeah, if you look under new releases, you can just kind of see it
Okay.
like based on like today and then going back, like what are the most recent games uh, that have come out. And sometimes I'm surprised. Sometimes I'm surprised at um, I keep an eye on that and like Nintendo's official channels and what games they're promoting. And sometimes they'll promote games officially that don't look all that great, and sometimes uh, a very polished, solid-looking game will come out that is difficult to find unless you're kind of sussing through every single release.
Yeah, yeah.
It can be hard to tell why certain games fall through the marketing cracks like that.
Absolutely. Or why some don't because they appear or they seem like they should sometimes,
Right,
right?
like, yeah, I don't know enough about, like, these developer stories to be like, "Okay, how did you get in with Nintendo when these other developers didn't?" But yeah.
A lot of times it seems like they just found a publisher and then the publisher had the ins with Nintendo and the publisher says, "Well, now your game's 1 penny." And then it got to
Huh.
shot to the stop shot
I
to the top and
I
then
heard Nintendo's been doing things to prevent that from happening so much, but,
yeah,
I'm sure it still happens to an extent.
yeah.
And, yeah, those I'm sure yeah, have you talked about that phenomenon on the show before?
I don't think I have, but it's
How
definitely a thing.
yeah, it's just like especially the first wave, man, of developers, they were making a killing by having a game that wasn't even that great and just, like it's just another one of those race at the bottom kind of phenomenons where it's like,
I bought a lot of them just out of pure research.
yeah, I know,
Some of them are
yeah,
good.
yeah,
There was one,
yeah.
what is it called? Man, it's so high up on my playlist. Mana something.
Oh, is that Mana Spark?
Mana Spark, that's what it is.
That's
Thank you,
funny.
thank you. I don't know why I couldn't remember that. I wasn't thinking about bringing it up. But yeah, Mana Spark was like $1 or something like that.
Yeah,
And I think it originally released for like $15 or something like that on Steam.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, but it's funny because I've actually played it too, and it's a competent game, but it's,
it's got some issues.
it's got that kinda roguelite thing, but it's compared to other games in its space, it's very unpolished.
Yeah.
But yeah, as a $1 game, it probably because it hit that sweet spot of like when you sell your game for super cheap, you'll get 1 billion downloads. They probably made a killing off of that.
Yeah, and I think the publisher probably made most of it. That's just the way those things go, it seems like.
It depends. Depends on your publisher deal.
Right, right. That specific publisher, Qubit, I don't know too much about them, but I see that they do that a lot
Mm,
because I purchase these games and I'm like, oh, another Qubit game.
that's interesting.
But yeah, yeah, it's just one of those things. But you self-published Indiana Stone, and you're probably going to self-publish this game, or are you looking for a publisher?
No, I'm definitely getting a publisher for this game.
Okay, okay.
Part of the reason is to compete artistically. I'll need to hire quite a few artists, and yeah, I don't have
Ah,
enough
okay.
personal savings to cut all that. But yeah, at the moment, it's actually my girlfriend who's doing a lot of the early concept art and
Is
uh,
that what I saw?
character designs and such. No, that what you saw was my friend Demi did a
Oh,
lot of
okay.
the old 3D modeling and such. Yeah, I was still working with her, but she's been super busy. She's actually moving to Seattle right now,
Oh,
like
wow.
most Phoenix developers. But yeah, I know she's been doing contract work for Bungie lately, which is cool. She would
Wow,
she would be
yeah.
a very cool person to get on the show if you could.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you'd have to introduce me.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, actually.
She
Um,
is very cool and very talented.
and yeah, she's an artist, then I take it.
She's a 3D artist. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, well, you have to tell me more about her later. So yeah, talked about a lot. Was there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to cover? Did we miss
Um.
anything?
Not that I can think of. I
Um,
know. I know. I've been kind of yammering
no,
my
no,
mouth
you've been
on my
great.
life story.
No, I'm sure there's a ton that we missed. Because as long as I've known you, I don't really know you that well because we just know from the meetings, and those were only
Yeah.
monthly. So,
Yeah.
um,
It's kind of when it comes to like personal development history. Like I've always kind of uh wondered if it's worth like having a website that like mentions or celebrates my old games, but they're also like really terrible.
Yeah.
uh, like the game, like I've been making games since I was in high school, which was in the 90s. Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of them are sort of parody games that don't really hold up today. The humor doesn't really hold up. Uh, and that's fine. I've made a lot of good friends through the years through game development, and I think that's the most important thing that I've gotten from everything.
Is the friends.
Yeah,
Yeah. Honestly, that's the reason why I started doing this show, is because I wanted to network, and this gives me a great excuse to just be like, "Hey, can we talk about game dev?"
yeah, for sure.
Because sometimes it's like it's hard to put time aside and talk about stuff like that with for no reason. So it's a little bit easier when you've got something to promote.
Yeah.
And as a dev, like who doesn't have something to promote, right?
Oh yeah, guys, keep an eye out for this game that I'll probably be releasing in 2 years.
Is that what we're looking at, or is that
I,
just your
I
your sarcastic voice?
that's actually probably not super unrealistic. That's going to be kind of probably the deal that I'm going to be getting with my publishers. You always want to not spend 2 to 5 years on a game, but that doesn't really happen.
Right, right. Oh, I have a good question for you, because I'm not super keen on publishers. I've never worked with one. I don't know that much about them. Now, is your game already up on Steam at all, or no?
What game?
Space Ruckus. Have you already
Oh
started
no,
with wish listing
no,
or
no,
anything?
no. Like I said, I do think that I'm literally years away from a release. So,
Well, it takes
um,
years to gather enough wish lists sometimes, right?
well, yeah. So there's the whole like, by the end of this year, I'm hoping to have enough of a vertical slice to pitch to publishers, and
And then
it'll
help let
it, it
them
would
take care of
probably
that.
probably be sometime next year that would have like the Steam page and maybe release a demo during like one of the Steam festivals and yada yada. But I have like a vague idea of what I want to do, but nothing set in stone. That's for sure.
I wonder, in a publisher setup like that, if who takes care of the Steam store then? Is that done by the publisher or by the developer then?
Um,
Or would
yeah,
that
that's a good.
depend on the
I mean,
contract?
yeah, it would depend on the contract. Like, I have a friend, somebody who I used to work with at Cartoon Network, recently released a Steam game called Wild at Heart. Um,
Hmm,
I don't know if you've heard of that. It was also on the
sounds familiar.
Xbox Game Pass. But yeah, they worked with Humble as a publisher, and they did their contract right when uh, Humble was first starting to work with developers and actually publishing their games.
Sure.
But yeah, there's a lot of details you can work out. Like, will we be supplying our own QA, or will you do QA? Will we be doing our own localization, or will you do localization? So I'm sure it's like, um, and the more work that the publisher has to do, the more of a cut they're going to take.
Mhm. Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like a lot of stress, to be honest. So, I wanna wish
Uh,
you luck on that.
yeah, thanks. I still think it's probably less stressful than a Kickstarter.
Yeah, Kickstarter sounds stressful too.
I
That's no
know
way around that.
I know a couple of people who are just in really dire situations where they fail to meet their players' expectations, and now they just get like hate mail constantly.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that would suck. That would suck. Yeah, I don't know. There's got to be a lot of like thought put into Kickstarters. I think when you're about to like
It's
do
so
it,
hard though
don't pull the
because
trigger.
game design is so dynamic. It's
That's
like you can
true.
be working. It's like just space ruckus. If I can't even imagine like if I tried to do a Kickstarter back when you last played it, and I'd be
Hmm.
listing all these features and the direction of the game and everything, and then a year or two goes by, and I'm like, oh, guys, decided this didn't really work, so now it has this other totally different direction,
Yeah.
and had to scrap all of the art, and it's going to take another like year or two to make. It's like, can you
Mm,
imagine the backlash from something like that?
yeah, and sometimes it needs another crowd fund too, because the money evaporated doing the wrong thing, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like sometimes I feel like these people, they come up with an idea and say they have a crowd. That's usually the way it works. They already have a crowd that already supported them on another game. So then they're like, oh well, I've got this great idea,
Yeah.
and then they like they want to tell people. So they tell people, and it starts building up steam, and then
Yeah.
they realize that it doesn't work as a game design. It's just a cool sounding idea.
Yeah. Another thing that I've heard is people who like their game is actually 90% done, and they'll do the Kickstarter. Just actually, I'm not sure if this is viable now, but this was definitely viable back
Hmm.
when Kickstarter was newer, because you used to get a lot of press for just like an interesting looking game on Kickstarter.
Just for being there, yeah.
Yeah, and if your game like looked like it was done, like it was finished already, you would get a lot of press on Kickstarter. So you would get a ton of backers. That both gives you like early money to like finish the project up, and also like builds your initial kind of crowd to spread the word.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, that's outdated information. I have no idea what crowdfunding best crowdfunding strategies are out there these days.
There's a lot of them, and there's some great resources and stuff. I think the main thing is just to have a crowd, right? If you
Yeah.
don't have a crowd, then crowdfunding is kind of out of the question.
Yeah, and that's one great thing about the Steam uh the festival things. That's a great way to like bring people to your own Discord or whatever.
I'm so nervous about the festivals, but I think I'm just gonna wait till my game is like extremely polished and then cut a demo and then do that. Just
Yeah, how far away do you think you are from that?
it's hard to say. It's really hard to say. The I just updated last night or the other night, and it's like the most polished it's ever been. But
Yeah.
I'm already starting to look at things saying like, oh, I could fix this, I could fix that, and then I'm gonna have to make a new trailer again because I just made a new trailer. So it's there's a lot of work, but I it really depends, man. It depends on so much stuff, right? So I don't even want to say.
Yeah.
It's so hard to say, but I'm not working with a publisher, so I don't really have to say.
Yeah, you don't have to make any promises.
But within 3 years, I want the Steam release to be completely awesome. You know what I mean? Just like done. But
You'll
I
be the
would love to
next
have.
Duke Nukem Forever. The problem is the
Don't
longer
talk
you
like that.
the longer you take, the higher the expected quality for indie games is going to be.
It's true. It's already happened.
Yeah.
But luckily, I'm on top of not all the curve, but some of the curve, right? Because I mean, I didn't start back in 2010, but I did start in 2013. So
Ooh, dang, you have been working on it for almost as long as Duke Nukem Forever.
no, not this game, not this
Oh.
game. This game was late 2017. I started, but that's when I started using Unity, is what I'm trying to say.
I see.
Yeah, so it's not like I'm completely new to this stuff. And there are a lot of people that are completely new to it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's going to take them 5 years before they know what they're doing. So
Yeah.
I don't know. And then once they know what they're doing, then all hell's going to break loose. No, we'll have to
Yep.
see. Honestly, I think there's going to be like a like disappearance trend, like where it's like indie games were really cool and now this other thing's really cool, you
Mm.
know. And I think that might actually be a good thing for the people who are like diehards.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's hard to say.
Who would you say is the target market for most indie games?
It's changing. Right now, honestly, I'm starting to say that game devs are almost becoming the target market for indie games because I buy indie games, you buy indie games. I
Huh.
mean, every game dev I know buys indie games.
Yeah. And
Um,
there's so many game devs that it's almost like a snake eating its own tail kind of market.
there is a lot of that going on.
Every so often you see a game that kind of breaks through to mass media like Hades or Cuphead.
Yeah, and that's a little different. Where all of a sudden we're talking about uh, multiple millions of dollars in your pockets. Which honestly, I don't really see that as being the indie dream so much. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to have that type of money, but what are you going to do with it? Probably some of these people probably won't even make games after that.
Yeah, it's hard to say. You see the or sometimes you'll see indie developers make a lot of money, and then they'll roll that into making the game they really wanted to make, like with
Yeah.
Risk of Rain to Risk of Rain 2. You can just see the huge budget increase.
I don't know that one myself, but I've heard about it.
Yeah, but on the counterexample, you have something like Stardew Valley, which
Yeah.
the developer probably doesn't have a good reason to make another game after that. But hey, who knows? I can't speak for him.
And then developers like myself, I don't know about you, but I would love to get like a studio off the ground. I mean, even a small one where I just contract people out, or have a couple people that are constant, but get
Yeah,
something that keeps producing.
I think I just want to be sustainable. I think that ultimately my dream is I've always loved making games in a small team.
Yeah.
And right now my girlfriend and I haven't talked too much about her, but she has a very cool, like, unique art style that's 'cause she's primarily a illustrator
Ah,
for, like, right now, a medical company.
very
Um
cool.
and it brings, like, a very fresh, clean looking style to games. So we're experimenting with a few different directions for Space Ruckus. It would be a very unique approach to a space shooter.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
think that would work.
and yeah, we have a few other projects planned after this, as I think pretty much any developer does.
Yeah,
Um, so
the good
what
ones.
would be ideal is we make enough money from this game where she can quit her job. I can stop doing contract work, and then we can just kind of, like, travel the world, live in different countries each month, and just kind of work away at, like, the new projects, and that would be fun.
That would be fun. And if I had a partner, I'd probably be more aligned with that. But right now, my virtues are just like my game,
Yeah,
which is kind of sad. But it's not, and it's because it's something I've been working on, and it's coming along. But you know,
yeah. Well, yeah, things change, but it's always possible to turn some heads with a game that you release. But at the same time, it's not good to, like, put all your eggs in one basket. Like,
that's very
I
true.
I can't even count the number of times that I failed before Indiana Stone.
Yeah.
Dozens of times that I tried to make a living off of it, and it backfired.
And like that's great advice. I haven't personally tried to make a commercial release before, but I've definitely tried to make games over and over again and failed over and over again. I feel like I've got a lot of the kinks out that way. Of course, there's always going to be roadblocks and hurdles. But
Back in, like,
yeah.
2001, I um, I finished this game that took me years to make. It was this, like, long form, like, parody of the entire Mario franchise, where they're just drunk the whole time, and it's called Super Smashed Brothers. And I got it printed on CDs and in all these jewel cases with official art and everything.
Wow.
And I sold like 10 copies.
Jeez. Were you selling it online or
Yeah.
at okay. You didn't try it at game shops or anything like that?
Oh, well, actually, I worked at a game shop there, and I did, like, sneak them in a bit, but yeah, it didn't really stick.
Uh, maybe you should on a shareware episodic version.
Yeah.
Nah, maybe not. I don't
Yeah, I don't even remember what was the popular, like, because that was kind of before there even were, like, indie games. There's that weird period of time between, like, 94 and, like, 2005, when, like, everything, like, had to be by a big company. Everything had to be in 3D. There were no independent tools that you could use to make games in 3D.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, like Duke Nukem and Doom, I think were like,
that was before then.
okay, I see what you're saying.
Um, yeah, so a little bit after that, like, by then I'm talking about, like, Doom 3.
Okay, yeah, yeah, no, it was like you were stuck with like the Unreal Engine, and that was expensive.
It was very expensive, and then you had to get, like, a PlayStation 2 development kit, which would cost, like, 300 grand.
Yeah. No, I was very afraid of game development at that age.
Yeah, it just seemed like impenetrable. And yeah, it was really Braid that like brought back like, oh, you can actually make money making 2D games using like tools that like aren't ridiculously expensive. Yeah, it was Braid and Cave Story that like really like was a spark for the indie dev scene.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously that everyone remembers that, especially Braid being in the movie, right? Indie game, the movie. Everyone
Oh yeah,
remembers
sure.
that. That was like groundbreaking, earth shattering.
Yeah,
We're
indie
still
game the
feeling
movie
the
that definitely caused more harm than good.
we're still feeling the impact from that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and at the same time, it did cause a lot of harm, but yeah, it was also like it really inspired a lot of people. So I mean, you could look at that both ways.
That the Meat Boy developers constantly get mail from people who've seen the movie and they're like, oh, we want to live the indie dream too. What's the first thing that you would
The
recommend for me, a scrappy young lad trying to get by making indie games? And it's like, yeah, I've never heard this before. I've heard over time they got kind of jaded and are just like, I got one word of advice: don't.
it's just start with Flash like I did. No,
Get a popular game on Newgrounds.
yeah, that's a
Yeah,
different world.
the path to success changes every year, I swear.
It does. It does.
As soon
Yeah.
as somebody has their GDC talk prepared on like how they got success, it's already outdated information.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's still valid to a degree to see how someone else found success, but you have to take it with that grain of salt because success. First of all, success is different for everyone. Second of all, well, there's a whole story that he's not telling, and then third, things change.
Yeah, and who knows? For me, maybe you'll talk to me a year from now, and I'll be retired from game development, and I've moved to a small countryside, and I've decided to raise goats for a living.
I didn't bring up goats, but I wanted to. You have a goat for a logo, right?
Oh, that's true. It's a low goat.
A low goat. What's the deal with the goats?
Well, I had a pet goat
Did you?
growing up. Yeah. And,
Wow.
I like to say that my goat taught me everything that I know about game design. They're just very playful creatures by nature.
They are. They are. Now, you mentioned that you moved to Phoenix. I'm not sure where you lived before. Was it like a goat bearing place?
A goat bearing. It
Goat
was
bearing city?
a very small town in western Massachusetts. But yeah, it
They
was it
they
was a
had
tiny
many
town.
goats?
I mean, we had a pet goat. There were some places that had goats. It was fairly unusual for us to have a pet goat. It's like none of our neighbors did.
Okay. So you
Um,
were the only kid on the block with a goat.
for whatever reason, well, we didn't really have blocks, but yeah, I was the only
Country
kid
blocks.
on the like weird stretch of road.
Well,
That was
that's kind of cool.
um, yeah,
It makes a lot of sense now.
for whatever reason, my mom was really into farm animals. We had chickens and uh, you know, some other crap. We had rabbits for a while, just a bunch of them.
I had a single pet rabbit.
Yeah, once you have two rabbits, expect to have hundreds of
I
them.
had two mice that ended that way.
Oh,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, growing up in a super small town like that, or like with just like these crazy like hilly roads where like you couldn't even like ride your bike because it would just be too dangerous. Um, there were no bike paths, there was no sidewalk. Um,
Wow.
yeah, we lived on a street that had like a speed limit of like 60 and like a lot of blind corners and such.
Mhm.
So as a kid, it's like, oh, either I'll go for a short walk or I'll hang out in my backyard or I'll just play and make video games all day.
So you actually got started way back then, huh?
Yeah, yeah, my mom actually taught me how to program on the Commodore 64.
Well, that's very kind of her.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And does she have a computer science background?
Back when she was in college, she took some COBOL,
Okay.
but yeah, not much else. She's actually
Oh,
a doll artisan.
a doll artist.
Yeah, if you look up Lucy Winsky, Lucie, you'll find my mom's dolls. They're very big in Europe.
I'll have to check them out. That's really cool.
So
So
it's
she
definitely where I
hand
get a lot
paints
of my
them?
creativity from. Yeah.
That's very cool. And you've I mean, game design's your thing, but did you have any art background at all growing up either?
Not really. I've always been pretty um terrible artistically. I don't know what it is. It's just um I don't really imagine things like super crisply. I can imagine abstract ideas like mechanics and such, but when it comes to like visual representations, I just have a really hard time like picturing things or expressing myself or anything like that.
So of all the roles in game development, do you think design's your favorite?
For sure. And I would say that everything else that I do is for the sake of design. Like I only know how to program so that I can bring designs to life.
I'm in that same boat.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common for a game developer.
Yeah, especially Unity developers. I think it's a little less common with the Unreal developers, but
Oh, really?
well, it's well, I guess the difference is if you're doing C++ or if you're doing the blueprints, right?
Yeah. Though Unity has its whatever, the Playmaker,
Playmaker.
whatever it's called, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I
Uh,
guess you're right. So you can make a whole game with that from what I hear.
I think some notable games have been made with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Very
I can't
art,
think of any. What was
very
it?
art narrative
Ah,
heavy games.
there was one, but I can't think of what it was, and it was made with Playmaker, but it's not coming to me.
The first tree is the game I was thinking of.
Ooh, absolutely.
Back when I used to use click and play, I had a friend who was like, "Oh, if you're not making a game in straight C, never even mind the C++ crap. Just use
Right.
straight C or it doesn't count." And it's like,
Assembly.
what an arbitrary line in the sand.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it depends on what you're doing, really, and where your goals are. Like, if you're trying to write something for like a machine, then yeah, maybe you should use machine language at some point. But
Yeah,
if you're trying to make a video game like that, we have these high level languages for that.
yeah, yeah. And you don't even notice the overhead anymore. It's like so many of these tools are so good at like compiling themselves in such a way to be as efficient as possible. So
Oh yeah, it's to the point where you need to buy a crappy computer just to see if it'll run your game, right?
yeah, yeah.
Because the good ones will run it no problem.
There's no reason not to use the best tools available. Yeah, it maybe 10 years ago you could have still made a case for writing your own engine for something. I don't think that's true anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, tons of people do it, but I think it's a like
Do
a
they?
self-fulfillment thing.
You
Well,
don't
maybe not
really hear
tons.
about it anymore.
So what I'm thinking of more is games that came out around like what 2014, 2015, where they started working on like XNA and stuff. So it's not really like they made their own engine because they're using XNA, but it's kind of
Yeah,
their own engine because it's not Unity or Unreal, right?
right. Yeah, sure.
Like what's one Axiom Verge, right?
Oh, okay, sure.
XNA, and it came out during that period where like, well, XNA is deprecated, but they probably started it before it got deprecated.
Hmm.
I mean, XNA, that was a whole nother beast. I remember trying to learn that and just being really frustrated, just trying to code a camera. I just
Yeah,
drag and drop it.
I used to really enjoy playing the on the 360, the Xbox indie games. I think those had to be made in XNA to like
Yeah.
compile to the Xbox.
Yeah, that's what it
Um,
was for.
but yeah, those were fun to play. I used to host a bad indie game night where we would go through a bunch of random games.
That actually sounds like fun.
Yeah, we were
Very
thinking
cool.
we've had a lot of fun times and we're like, oh man, maybe we should be like streaming this on Twitch or something. But then it's like, I don't know, it feels kind of mean to be like, hey, it's bad indie game. We're just making fun of all these subpar games. That was somebody's passion.
Yeah, I mean, there was that shovelware era where it was almost like too easy,
Yeah, that's true.
and
And
now
to
it's
be fair,
almost like,
we did find like a handful of really good games that way.
yeah.
Uh,
And nowadays it's almost the opposite, where it's like there's creators out there who are putting their heart on their sleeves, and if you like, just jokingly make fun of them, that might actually hurt their feelings and cause
sure.
detriment. So it's like
Hey,
you
it
got
would
to
hurt
think
my
about what you're
feelings.
doing, but yeah. Also, if you're a game dev and you no one can talk about your game, like maybe you shouldn't show people.
I mean, there's this phenomenon where like this is a real thing where you can release a game and 100 people say something very positive about your game, and then one person says something super negative about your game. It's that one negative thing that's going to stick with you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And as
So
as designers, we gotta just like roll with the punches and know what
yeah,
to listen to.
yeah, it's just releasing your own like project out there. It's just such a personal thing when it's an indie project.
Yep. Yep. Just kind of have to distance yourself the right amount, and you know
So I guess the solution is just to uh not read anything about the game.
that's one possible solution. It might bite you in the ass. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard. I know very talented people who have made awesome games and refuse to release them for that reason. Just scared of um, putting themselves out there.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta think about the goal of the game, and if the goal is, if, purpose has been served, and you hadn't released it, then maybe you don't need to release it. You know,
Maybe.
it's pretty artful way of making games. It's like painting in a closet and
Yeah,
not showing anyone.
sure,
It
sure.
could be done,
But yeah,
but
and
you're not gonna
I
make
do
a lot of
think
money that
that
way.
is I don't know. Do people like you hear about people doing that with like art and music and everything, but that's because those are like kind of singular competencies that like are a form of expression. Um, if you take something a little bit more complicated, like movie making or something, you
Mhm.
might do hobby like little movie making or little shorts like just for your family, but I've never heard of anybody doing that just for themselves. Like,
I mean,
oh,
I'm
I'm just
sure it
gonna make
happens where you
yeah,
don't
I'm
feel
just gonna make a
confident.
little indie movie just for myself and nobody else
Well,
can see it.
it probably doesn't start that way, but I'm sure a lot of things end that way.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, if you're not very good at it and then you realize it halfway through,
Oh,
probably not
sure.
gonna show a bunch of people.
Sure.
That happens with indie games.
True.
But I'm in the boat where you should show people right away. And if they tear it apart, that's great. They're talking about your game.
Yeah.
That means they put the effort to put cognitive thoughts together and say this game sucks and for these reasons, hopefully, and then you can make it better, right?
I mean, it depends, right? If you have, I want to make a game, and you put that on your bucket list, then it doesn't really matter what kind of feedback that you get. But if it's like, I want to make some kind of money from a game, then it's good to have friends who will have a little bit of a critical eye.
Absolutely. Or you could just want to make people happy, and then you don't have to worry about the money, but you better have a side job.
Yeah, yeah. I've actually made games as gifts in the past. I made a game as a wedding gift once.
That is really awesome.
You play as little Cupid with my face on it, and you have to like shoot love arrows between like different people in a crowd until you get to the back area where you can see the married couple and you can hook them up.
That's hilarious. That's like clippable right there. I'm surprised that you don't do like, I don't, that's like marketable somehow. That's really hilarious. Like making a game for an event. But for the two people that the event's for, that's even better, right?
Yeah.
That's a really cool idea. I mean, obviously you'd have to keep the scope way down and all that, but I mean, there might even be money in that if you were to figure out a way to like market it, but
Yeah,
that
I
would
don't
be a
know.
whole nother beast.
Yeah, then you'd have the whole problem of like, oh, I want you to do it, but I want you to do it for me for $5 because we're already spending so much money on this wedding. So,
Oh god, it's like being a wedding DJ.
yeah, probably
Yeah,
not super
except
practical when you think about it.
yeah, it's harder than just bringing your iPod.
True.
All right. Well, we've covered a ton here, and I've kept you on longer than usual. But I want to thank you so much. And Tim Winsky, twinsky.com, right?
Twinskygames.com.
Twinskygames.com.
I
Okay.
updated it at some point within the last 2 years, but there will be more coming soon. I wish
Very cool.
that I could tell you like a mailing list to join or a Discord server to join or anything, but I guess you'll just have to have me on later.
Yeah. No, I'd love to have you back. Is there anywhere else you can point people, or is that it?
Well, I guess I do technically have a Steam like company thing since I'm listed as one of the developers for the Cartoon Network game. But yeah, I'll just tell people probably the most accessible thing. Funny enough, the most accessible thing that I have right now that people can play, you need a VR headset for. But if you do, make sure you check out Cartoon Network Journeys, in particular the Jester game.
Cool. Just to Impress, was it?
Yep.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you again, man. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, you bet. Anytime.
All right. Well, take care.
You too.
Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. If you have a VR HMD, then go check out Cartoon Network's Journeys VR. It's completely free on Steam, and Tim designed the Just to Impress module, which is great if you don't have VR or if it doesn't agree with you for whatever reason. Go check out some YouTube videos of this game. It's hilarious. Okay, everyone, take care and enjoy the rest of your day.